Well, it's that time. Pooch and Pretty, or Pretty and Pooch show. But we're in, and boy, we got a good one for you tonight. Very special thanks to our guests that will come up here in a little bit. Most of y'all know her. I'm sure a lot of y'all know her. If you know me through her, probably. So that's good. And but we're completely and very honored to have her on tonight um, to share her story. You know, we're kind of going to let her run with what she cares to share. But boy, we had a good time, good visit with her last night prior to coming on to this or even doing this. And this is kind of going the way that I wanted it to go as far as a Pretty and Pooch show. And as most of y'all know, Pretty's does radio shows too. But this will kind of be geared to her style and how she does interviews. But, you know, I don't know that, and we were just talking about this prior. We're not quite sure this is how we want Pretty and Pooch show to be. But being it's our first kind of live with someone and someone dear and special to me and us, even more so after our visit last night with Eileen, because Eileen, welcome to our kitchen, is our guest tonight. And we're going to bring her on in here. And welcome in, Eileen.
Hello. Thank you.
I'm so glad that you agreed to come in and join us tonight. And you know, this is our first pretty much type of an interview thing, and it's even more of an honor to have you in as our first. And as I've expressed to you guys, you and Piggy both, I just love y'all. I just love Piggy and Eileen.
Well, I told y'all last night how I felt about both of you, and I hope that, conveys, like I said, just let you know I felt about you the same way I do about Georgette, who was my sister of the heart. And that's exactly how I see the two of you. And I truly enjoyed our conversation last night. I did. It was very cathartic for me.
I was wondering if it would be, and yeah, I mean, hello everybody. I have my own radio show on Joco Community Radio. My show is called No Judgment Here with Tish Ross. And initially I was going to have Eileen on, and still may have her on my radio show. But the more Mike and I chatted about it, the more we thought, well, since this community knows you, they may not know your entire story, but they know you. And the fact that, listen, after I heard your story last night in depth and in detail, man, you are, everybody on here I know will agree that you are so beautiful, so giving, so loving, so selfless. You do so much for the YouTube community, this family. And I mean, I wonder, and we'll get into it, but I even thought about it today a lot, even when I was in school teaching my littles, thinking, wow, you're going to do so much good by sharing. And I know that vulnerability can be very trying at times for some. I've even had guests that it can be exhausting mentally and emotionally. But you're already beautiful to us. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking today, man, what a woman. Even so much more. Just that halo is shining.
Oh, well, thank you. But I might be Piggy's angel, but I'm not really an angel or anything like that to carry the halo.
Oh, yes, you are.
I think you don't give yourself enough credit. You really don't. You're such an amazing woman. And so I want to welcome everyone that's coming in, and Mike's going to kind of follow, or Pooch is going to kind of follow the comments or questions. So please, if you have comments or questions, I'm going to kind of run this or lead this as I normally do my radio station. And again, this is a first for Pooch and I to do something like this. We don't know that we'll keep it like
This format.
here. I may take it back to my YouTube channel because it's what I do. And I know that people don't really, I don't know. We
want to keep it real, and I even want my
this
channel to
is
be
real.
real. But Pretty and Pooch, when we're together, it'll be real. But we like to have fun too. So, but another thing I'd like to stress with this: a lot of you folks know all of us. This can be kind of personal, and like her show, and like my channel, and like Eileen's channel, like a lot of y'all's channel. There's no judgment, no drama, no politics, no nothing. So. But definitely appreciate Eileen sharing, and it's something for all to learn and listen to. So,
okay. Well, Vineyard Farmhouse says Full Grown Country. It would be best if you chose the widescreen from both channels.
Yeah, let's see if I can do that there.
12 Stone, I don't have a secret, sorry. But I do want to say hi to everybody in chat because I haven't got to say hi to everybody. So I know there's several in there, so this is covering everybody. Hi.
Same here. Appreciate you all coming. Those that'll come in a bit, but we'll kind of just roll along with this. And I know I shed some tears last night, and ain't afraid to cry at all. But that woman and Piggy is close to my heart, regardless. So I'll let Baby do her thing, and Eileen. Remember, you take it and go with what you care to, and we'll just kind of roll on with it.
Yeah, well, Eileen and I chatted via text, and we spoke last night for about 2 hours. Is that about right? And so we know that we are going to condense some of the details. But the one thing that I want to say, kind of to piggyback on what Pooch said, is that this is a very personal story. It may trigger some people that are listening. So choose to listen or not. We understand. And a big part of this is one of the reasons why I think that both Eileen and myself and Pooch wanted to do the show is to help others know that they are not alone, and for healing for others, and so that people will know that this didn't only happen to one person, that, oh gosh, that happened to Eileen, and so I now feel like I am going to be okay, or maybe even connect Eileen with someone that she can chat with privately. But this touches base on molestation and depression and even suicidal thoughts. And one of the things that we talked about last night was that Eileen was raised by a single mom. And so I want to go ahead and start with that, a little bit about your childhood and your biological father, and then how your stepdad came in. And again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. I'll may stop Eileen at some point if a question pops into my head, or if I need to redirect or anything like that. So go ahead, Eileen. And again, thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, you're welcome. As Tish said, I was basically raised by a single mom and my grandmother. My mom got married in August of 1968 to my biological father. And by May of 1969, he had left the picture. She was heavily pregnant with me. And before he left, he gave her a parting shot of pushing her down a steep hill. And then he called the cops and accused my grandmother and my uncle of assault and battery on my mom. They wound up in jail and finally got bailed out. But after that, my grandmother took my mom in. And when my mom had me, they both raised me. And I lived with my grandmother for 6 years. I was 6 years old when my mom met my stepdad. And that was in February of 76 that she met him. And she met him through a mutual friend who was actually married to his cousin.
And so you never knew your biological dad. You never met him. After he injured your mother, pushed her down the stairs when she was 6 months pregnant with you. He was gone after that. You never met him.
Out of my life. Yeah. I never met anyone in his family until I was about, I want to say 8 or 9 years old, probably about 8. And then I met his brother and sister-in-law. And that was the first time I'd met anybody on that side of the family. But,
and then your stepdad came into the picture.
Yeah. My stepdad came into the picture when I was 6 years old. And take into account, I have an uncle who is my mom's older brother. And then I had 2 uncles that were married to my mom's, 3 uncles that were married to my mom's sister. But I did not live in the household with them, so I did not know what a father figure was. I knew what an uncle was, but I didn't know what a father was. And so when my mom met my stepdad, they started dating. And in that process, the molestation started, though I didn't at that time know it was molestation. It was play. It was love. It was him showing me affection, according to him. And it was touching, and it was inappropriate touching. And I never said anything to anyone about it because, like I said, I didn't know. And I didn't want to get him in trouble because my mom was happy. And so by August of 76, my mom and my stepdad got married. And we moved out. And then a major person in my life passed away. It was my grandmother. She passed away in February of 77. So, but all through this time, from the time I was 6 years old, my mom first met my stepdad, until I was 13 years old, my stepdad molested me. Now, I'm not going to say it was a deep sexual molestation like a rape or anything like that. Everything was inappropriate touching, inappropriate pictures, the talk, the speak, the way he talked to me. To me, it's not as bad as I've seen others go through, but it doesn't matter because all molestation is bad. Mm-hmm. It should not happen at any point, at any time. Because I know I had a guilt complex over it once I realized what had happened. I blamed myself. And it wasn't just my stepdad. His cousin also did the exact same thing to me, touching inappropriately, trying to teach me about oral sex at a young age. It's something that no child should ever have to go through. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I had built up anger. I had built up bitterness inside myself. I had guilt issues. I had hatred issues. But I never let it out. And as I told Tish, I was 13 years old. That was 7 years of going through all of this. And when I was 13, I told my mom, I can't put up with it anymore. I can't do it anymore. I can't live like this. And when she finally asked me, what are you talking about? And I told her, she put a stop to it. She told my stepdad we were going to leave, that she was going to tell his son what he had done. And he would never be able to see his grandkids again. She was going to tell his granddaughters and his stepdaughters what he had done. And, he begged her not to, because he denied doing it. The whole time he denied doing it. Mm. But she did not believe him. She believed me. And that said a lot about my mom right there. And the fact that she knew I would not lie to her about something like that. Mm-hmm. And my mom did not work outside of the home. She did not know how to drive. She was not money conscious. Anything that was done as far as paying bills, buying groceries, and all that, my stepdad did. So we had nowhere to go. Even though she threatened to leave, we had nowhere to go. And we stayed. Now, she rearranged the living conditions in the house. She moved she put him on a half bed where my bed was and put me in the bedroom with her on a half bed. And so our living conditions totally changed at that point in time.
And how did you feel about, I mean, did you feel, because I know a lot of people that maybe even outside of this particular group, a lot of people that would be listening might wonder how a child feels about staying in the house with someone who molested them. And I know that your mom, and I can relate, as you and I chatted last night about our moms, how, my mom couldn't leave our dad either. He was an abusive alcoholic. And so we sort of, I don't know, I think we just had an unspoken understanding of why. So how did you feel about staying in the same house with your stepdad?
It was like once all of that, once the molestation stopped, I was fine with it because I was never alone with him. Mm-hmm. My mom was always with us, after that, to that point. And I was never really alone with him in a room again. And like I said, it stopped. Now, after the molestation stopped, the verbal abuse began and some physical abuse. And, but I had always been taught, from early age, I was raised in the church. My grandmother, my mom made sure I went to church. And I was always taught about forgiveness. You have to forgive people that have trespassed against you and done wrong to you. And I tried to forgive him for what he did and for lying about it, for saying he didn't do it when he did. And just knowing that it wasn't happening, that made it easier to stay there.
Okay.
And as I said, I told you last night, the physical abuse, the verbal abuse began. And it might have been just, a short while after that he beat me with a belt because I was not sweeping the floor correctly, the way he thought it should be swept. And I took a broom. I had the broom in my hand. And I'm not talking about one of these little lightweight aluminum brooms. I'm talking about this was a solid wood handle, heavy broom. And I cracked him over the head with it more than once. And, my mom kind of tried to break us up on it. She got knocked on the couch. She said, go ahead, kill each other. I can't stop you. And he went to swing the belt one last time, and I popped him and basically floored him. He dropped onto his bed. And I told him, I said, you'll never hit me again. I said, you told me to take up for myself if anybody started anything with me. If anybody started a fight with me for no reason, I was to protect myself and take up for myself. I said, you're not hitting me again. And he never quit me again after that. Mm-hmm. The verbal abuse was pretty bad. Mm-hmm. And I dealt with that better, I think, than I did with the other, even though it did leave scars inside on the verbal abuse. But he reaped, I guess in the Bible, it tells us we reap what we sow, and he eventually did. He died a horrible death. I was in the hospital room with him and my mom when he passed away, and he was laying there. He said, and he was screaming, I'm burning, put out the flames. And there were no flames, but I could actually see, how you see fumes from gasoline. I could see the fumes, or what looked like fumes, coming up off of the bed, like off of a flame. And I told Piggy, I said, I believe in my heart, he was literally burning in hell when he died. Mm-hmm. And I saw that. And I feel sorry for him because he died that way. But it was his choice.
Right. And you said that you actually grew up in a very loving family. That family was so important to your mom, and that you really had and I don't want to minimize and say aside from the molestation, but you did have a good childhood. You said your family was super important and everyone was always together.
Yeah. I mean, other than that happening in my life, I had a wonderful childhood. my mom and my grandmother, they made sure they instilled a love of reading, instilled a love of knowledge, music, everything in my life. Um, my grandmother and I and my mom would sit down on Saturdays and Sundays, and we would watch Hee Haw, Lawrence Welk, United Mutual Omaha's United Wild Kingdom thing, and Disney. These were our Saturday and Sunday night things, and then through the week, because it was just a little bitty black and white TV, we might watch TV, or we might be in the kitchen playing a card game or a board game. And they taught me how to play cards at 3 and 4 years old. And they were, when I started kindergarten, I knew my ABCs. I knew how to count to 100. I could write my name. My mom and my grandmother were so devoted to me, and my grandmother had other grandchildren, and she tried not to show favoritism. And I think she did a wonderful job on that. But it was like every Sunday afternoon, pretty much. If it wasn't every Sunday, it was every other Sunday. Family was at the house for a get together for dinner. And during the summertime, everybody was always dropping in to work on the garden, help with canning, help with laundry on Saturday mornings. My granny had an old ringer washer, and it would be her and my mom and my aunts washing clothes and hanging them out on the line. And, it was all that family time, and we loved each other. Yeah, we fought like cats and dogs most of the time. Me and my aunts did, because I have one aunt that was only 14 years older than me. And, we kind of fought like cats and dogs throughout the years, but we loved each other. And, as I got older, I always tried to make sure my mom had spent time with her family. And that's one thing I can say about my stepdad. He always made sure to take her to visit her family. He did that. And as bad as he was, as far as molestation and some other things about him, he made sure my mom got to see her family and spend time with them.
So after that molestation, as you were going through middle school and high school, you had mentioned that you never dated anybody. And do you think that was the reason why?
Oh, I know in my heart, after saying that last night, because I had never thought about it, but I know it was because I ate to gain weight, to hide. Food was my comfort. My weight was my protection against anything like that happening, against somebody touching me, molesting me. And which is odd, because I wanted a boyfriend. I wanted to have a relationship with someone. I wanted to get married and have kids. But I can see now, after I was talking last night and then you asking that question, I really defeated that because I was afraid. I had that fear of intimacy because of what had happened. And I just, for some reason, it never clicked with me until we talked. And during high school, I had a lot of male friends. I had, some female friends, but majority of my friends were male. But they were like brothers or cousins. They weren't boyfriend or what I would consider boyfriend material.
Right.
So that was weird, because I think I told you the first time I ever went on a date, I was in my 20s. And and that was a blind date. Someone had set us up to go out together, and I actually went on a double date. I made sure that the girl that set us up, that she and her boyfriend went with us. I would not go by myself with him because I did not know this man.
Right.
And that was a an eye opener right there for me.
Wise choice too, probably.
And so during your senior year in high school, you said that you started to feel depressed or feeling like something was wrong, and that's when your first bout with depression sank in. Can you tell those people that are watching or listening a little bit about that?
Yeah. After my stepdad died, I was 16 when he died. He died in June of 1986. I turned 17 July of 1986. It was my senior year of high school. I was working full time. I worked 5 days a week, sometimes 6, and that would be after I got out of school, I would go to work and work 6 to 8 hours and go home. And I was the one at that time paying the bills, buying the groceries, driving everywhere, making, a lot of the decisions, because as much as I love my mom was not at that point mentally capable of doing a lot of things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now she was very smart in some of the things that she could do, but she knew her limitations on some things, and taking care of the bills and, being the breadwinner per se and buying groceries and things like that was just not something that she was mentally capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to take that on. And by December of '86, I felt that, I just, there was something about it that I was not feeling right with myself. And I told my mom, I said, I can't continue going to school and working. I'm either going to have to go to school or I'm going to have to work, one of the two. I can't do both.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that what she had coming in from her little part-time job that she was doing, first time she'd worked outside the home since she was a teenager. And I made the decision that I was going to quit school and go to work full time. And we left the trailer that we owned, gave it to my stepdad's grandson, and we moved to another community. And we actually started staying with some friends of ours. And instead of getting a job with our friends, I actually went into a deep depression. I was sleeping 24 hours a day. I would get up just long enough to eat, bathe, wash my hair. And this would be, as far as bathing and washing my hair, that might have been once a week. I mean, that's how bad it was for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I might eat once a day. And as I was telling you last night, I had gotten up and I was washing off, because the people we were staying with, the home they lived in, only had running water in the kitchen. They did not have an indoor toilet or anything like that. And so that was kind of like an outhouse experience at that point. And I was getting ready to wash my hair. And as I had bent over to wash my hair, I saw a butcher knife laying on the table. And it just ran through my mind how easy it would be to take that knife and run it across my throat and end it all. And I had actually reached for the knife, and I heard my mom's voice coming from the living room. And it came from, I can't do this. I can't do it to her. It wasn't I couldn't do it to me. I couldn't do it to her. I couldn't put her through that. And so I just brought my hand back and I continued to wash my hair. And when I got through, I went and I laid back down. And it was not long after that the man of the house that we were staying with, now, it's like I told Tish, I do not condemn my mother for the decisions she made. She was not the only party making decisions at that time. It was this gentleman as well. She had a sexual relationship with her friend's husband, with the people we were staying with. And what got me about it was the fact that while I was going through this depressed thing and I was in bed asleep, I woke up and they were having sex next to me in the bed. And I made that decision at that time. We could not do this. This was not acceptable. And it was like the next day he had approached me about having sex with me, and I told him no. And I told my mom what had happened, and I told her I was not going to go through that. And we made the decision to leave there and go stay with another friend until my stepdad's last check came in, so that we would have money to leave and move to Kentucky. And we stayed with our friend, and when my dad's check got there, my mom cashed it. We gave this lady some money for allowing us to stay there and to help her cover expenses. And we packed up what we could in our little 1979 Ford Pinto. If it didn't fit in that little Pinto, it didn't go. It was packed top to bottom, front to back, every crack and crevice. I barely had room to sit in the driver's seat and drive. That's how packed it was. And we headed to Paducah, Kentucky, and that was in February of 1987.
And so I can only, I think that people that suffer like the beginnings of depression, I don't know if when we were all younger, if there was much discussion about counseling or therapy or medications or things like that. So the one thing that you attributed your healing, I mean, especially if you were just getting ready you were reaching for the butcher knife, but then you heard your mom's voice, and you attribute that to God, that God's timing, because had you ended your life there, you said that really that you couldn't do that to your mom, that it wasn't really about you, that you couldn't do that to your mom.
Right.
But when I think when we really think about things like this, after you have survived so much, and I really believe that God saves us. He has a purpose for us, and you have a purpose. And I know that a huge part of your purpose is sharing your testimony so that others will know that they are not alone, that there is an opportunity for healing, that there is a reason to live. And I know that after you guys moved to Kentucky, that your mom had a major surgery, and then you had surgery as well. And then you found a job where you became the manager of a store, and you were the manager of that store for 7 years.
Yes.
And then both you and your mom decided to move back in November. Is that correct?
It was November of 2002. Well, we had decided in September of 2002 to move. We were going to do it in February of 2003.
Right.
But anybody that knows God has his own timing, and he will do things in his own way. And he had us moved by November the 30th of 2002. So from Labor Day weekend, September of 2002 to November, it was the weekend right after Thanksgiving 2002, we were moved lock, stock, and barrel back to Alabama.
And so when you guys moved back, your mom, you guys moved in an apartment.
It was a converted farmhouse. Yes, it was a farmhouse that had been converted into 2 apartments. It was on private property. The gentleman owned several rental properties that he rented out, and they were wonderful folks, truly wonderful.
And then your mom, she got sick and she was diagnosed with COPD.
Yeah, now that was while we were in Kentucky. She was diagnosed with COPD. She got diagnosed in, I want to say 1989 with COPD. She was on oxygen from that point on. And when we moved back to Kentucky, she was off oxygen for 1 year. She was completely off from Kentucky to Alabama. When we moved to the mountain, she was off her oxygen. She was off of the majority of her medications for 1 year completely. No problems, no issues. And it was like God gave her that 1 year freedom. Because after that, when she had to go back on everything, was when I had to start being her caregiver for the.
And so let's move into that. You then, once your mom then had to be on oxygen for the remainder of her life, you then became her caregiver 24/7.
Yes, 24/7.
And how old were you then?
Let's see, that was 2004. So that was, I was right around 30, maybe late 20s, early 30s at that point. I want to say early 30s because probably about 32, I think, 33, something like that.
And, y'all, you had kind of, as we were chatting yesterday, we talked about the financials of it. And because it just was not going to make sense for you to work a job that was only going to possibly pay for a home health nurse or home health care, that it made more sense for you to go ahead and stay home and be your mom's caregiver.
Right. Yeah. Where we lived, to have home health or a nurse come in was going to cost between $10 and $15 an hour for somebody to sit with my mom. The only jobs I could get locally, the most it would pay would be $8 an hour. And that had to cover gas back and forth to work, and it would have been paying bills. So everything I would have made, plus some of my mom's disability or SSI check, would have gone to pay somebody to sit with her. So we would have been in the negative to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas we figured it out, and at that point in time, we talked to our landlord. We moved into another unit of his. We got on Section 8 housing where our rent was paid. We lived off of my mom's SSI check to pay the monthly bills. We had food stamps or EBT card, if you want to call it that. I mean, growing up, it's always been food stamps to me, but it's EBT card. And that's how we made things work. And one thing I didn't say was, my mom was one of these people. She would call. Her ministry was calling on the telephone and talking to people and offering prayer to people. And at the time, we couldn't afford it because it would run our phone bill up so much because the way the phone was set up. And the phone company offered us a deal that they had started up in that area, and it was unlimited calling throughout the U.S. for a certain amount of money. And I had been praying about it because, I would get ill with my mom for her calling. And I prayed about it. I said, God, I said, if this is her ministry, I said, you've got to provide a way for us to be able to afford this. And the next day on that one, I got it in the mail to where we had that opportunity. And I signed up for it. And so it was this exact same amount every month, no fluctuations. And she could call and talk as long as she wanted all the time. So God provided that way. And he provided, with her SSI check, he provided with the EBT card because we made it work. And we had a little bit of money to eat out once a month. I would stop and get something once a month at one of the local little restaurants, whether it be a Chinese place, a Mexican place, or just a hamburger joint. And we would have takeout, or we might go and sit down, the two of us, at one of the sit-down restaurants, the Chinese place or the Mexican place. We could do that once a month. But that's because God provided a way for it, not because I was great at doing finances or anything like that. And it's because I did budget. I know that.
Right.
But that's just how it worked out for us. And my mom made sure that because I love to read, that I was able to purchase a book every month or purchase a cookbook and things like that. And I made sure she had her little Seeker Word books, Searcher Word, or whatever they're called.
Mm-hmm.
Had those, and we survived.
Made it work. God, you guys, God provided. You guys made it work. You were able to treat yourself. I mean, I think for a lot of people that go through a lot of trauma and depression and things like that, that you bring a light to focusing on what we have rather than what we don't have, or the things that we have as opposed to what we want. And I think that is probably some of the best advice that people can receive, is that if I were to go back and or many of us that have experienced some sort of trauma or issues when we were growing up, I think if I were to live and sit in that, then my life would be over, because I would remain depressed. I would not overcome and not allow God to use me the way that he intended. And so I want to move, because I'm watching the time. I want to move into the time that your mom was hospitalized and she was not going to be coming home.
That was January 2010.
Mm-hmm.
I had a devastating blow. We both had the previous year. My sister, the Heart Georgette, passed away July 2009 after having suffered a stroke in 2008. And then after that, my mom started going downhill. Her health started getting worse. And every time I would take her to her doctor, he would be surprised to see her. literally surprised that she would be there, because he told me, anytime she would go into the hospital and she would come out, he said, I never expect her to come out of the hospital.
Mm.
Well, in January 2010, it was January the 10th, 2010 to be exact, I had to call the ambulance to come and get her. She was hypoxic, not breathing very well, kind of rambling out of her mind. And rescue got there, then the ambulance got there, and they took her to the hospital. And she had pneumonia, and she was put on a ventilator, straight to ICU. She was in there for 15 days. They took her off the ventilator late on the 24th, it was early morning of the 25th, and kept her in ICU that night. And then they moved her out to the floor. That part of that day, then they brought her out to the floor on the 25th, put her in a room. On January the 26th, I was visiting her in her room, and it was my aunt's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom knew, because she asked me, she said, "What's today's date?" And, taking care, she's been on a ventilator for all that time, so she's sounding a little hoarse, but she was talking. And I told her, I said, "It's the 26th." And she just smiled. She said, "It's Lois's birthday." I said, "Yeah, it's St. Lois's birthday." And she said, "I wished I could wish her a happy birthday." And I had a little cheap cell phone. And when I say cheap, I mean it's one of those Dollar General phones that you could buy the little cards for. At the time, I think it was the track phone or something like that. And I had some minutes on it, and I said, "Okay." So I dialed Aunt Lois's number, and she answered. I told her I had somebody want to talk to her, and I gave my mom the phone, and my mom started singing "Happy Birthday" to her. And she talked to her for a minute, and I told my aunt goodbye. And I spent the day with my mom, and then I went home that evening, and I got a phone call the next morning about 6 o'clock. It was on January 27th. And they told me that my mom had taken a turn for the worse. And since I had her power of attorney, medical power of attorney, what did I want done? And I told them, whatever they had to do, if they had to intubate her, And they said, "Well, your mom does not want that." I said, "I don't care what my mom wants. I'm her power of attorney. You do what I have to do, what I tell you to do on that." And I left. I got up, I got dressed, I left and went to the hospital. I got there. It had to be between 7:30. It wasn't very much long. Maybe an hour after they called that I got there. And I heard a code blue being called as I walked back toward ICU. And something in my heart told me it was my mom, but I didn't want to believe that. And I waited out there because I was told that the doctor would come and talk to me. And he came out, and he told me that the code blue was my mom, but that they got her back only by the grace of God. Those were his words. He said, "It's nothing that I did. It's only by the grace of God that she's here." And he told me, he said, "But I will tell you this." He said, "If she ever comes off of the ventilator again, I will not put her back on it, no matter what you say or anyone else says. If she does not want it, she will not go back on it." I said, "Okay." And I was informed by him and the other doctors and nursing staff that I might want to call my family in. And I did. And I know that my mom died on February the 7th, 2010. And on January the 30th was a Sunday. And we had a lot of family come up to see her on that Saturday, Sunday, on the 29th and the 30th of January. And I have a cousin. She and her husband both are RNs and have worked in the hospitals in the Huntsville area for years, a lot of years. And at that time, my cousin came to visit, and I took her aside and I told her, I said, "Beth," I said, "I want you to tell me the truth. When you see Mama," I said, "don't sugarcoat it. Don't lie to me. Let me know the truth, what you think." And when she went in to see my mom and came back out, she looked at me. She said, she's not going home. She said, I don't know how much longer she has, but she's not going home.
Hmm.
I said, that's all I needed to know.
Hmm.
And that next morning on Monday, it was me and my mom's 3 sisters were at the hospital. And one of her brother-in-laws, well, actually 2 of her brother-in-laws, excuse me. It was my Uncle Wayne and Walter, my Aunt Elsie's husband at the time. And we're all sitting there, and the doctor came in to talk to us, and he told us that my mom was not making red blood cells, that she may need a transfusion. And I plainly asked him, I said, is her body shutting down? He never answered me. He just said that her body was not making red blood cells and that she may have to have a transfusion, and needed to know if I would be willing to sign for her to have a transfusion. And I told him yes. And he asked me at that time if I wanted her put on a DNR. I looked at the family and I asked them, I said, what do y'all think? And I'm told by every one of them, it's your decision. You're the one, so we will support you no matter what decision you make. And I signed a DNR paper. That week, we were all there. We had family coming in and out for that week, but 24 hours a day, it was me and my 3 aunts and my 2 uncles there at the hospital. And on Saturday, the 6th of February, everybody went home except for me. Everybody, I mean, you figure all of these people have health issues. My Aunt Lois at the time had a trach, and it was hard on her. My Aunt Ruthie had a lot of health issues of her own. My Aunt Elsie had health issues. My Uncle Wayne is a severe diabetic. So everybody needed a break. And I was left there on Saturday evening by myself. And I slept in the ICU waiting room where we were all sleeping. And then on Sunday morning, I went in to see my mom, and she was still asleep. And they told me she had had a rough night and had just gotten to sleep not long before that because she had a very fitful night. And my Aunt Shirley and Uncle Pete, my Uncle Pete is my mom's older brother. And they came up to visit for the 11 o'clock visitation, and she was asleep, so they didn't get to see her. And I went in at 4 o'clock to see her. And we talked as much as we could talk with her having a tube down her throat. Well, actually, by this time, sorry, she didn't have the tube. She had a trach. By this time, they had put the trach on her on that Monday. So it would have been, see, I said, I'm trying to think. It was the 1st, February the 1st, they put a trach in because she had already been on the ventilator for so long. And so they put a trach in. And she was learning to talk. She still couldn't talk because her throat was messed up from the vent tube. I had forgot about the trach until that point. I mean, that's wild that I forgot about that. But she was telling me or asking me where everybody was because she was used to seeing everybody. I told her, I said, they went home, they're resting, they're going to be back tomorrow. And she asked about Aunt Shirley and Uncle Pete because they had told her they would be up to see her that day. And I told her, I said, Mama said they came earlier today. You were sleeping and they didn't want to bother you. And they said that they would be back tomorrow or the next day to see you. Okay. And not being graphic, but things happened. My mom had a bowel movement. She needed to be cleaned. And I had already been in there with her for about 15, 20 minutes. And knowing she needed to be cleaned. And I did not want her laying there in that mess.
Right.
No. I told her, I said, Mama, I said, I'm going to go out into the waiting room and I'll be back in to see you. I said, but if you need me, you let the nurses know and they'll come get me once they get you cleaned up. I said, but I'll be back in at 8 o'clock. Now we had this thing. We always told each other we loved each other. Enter a room, leave a room. I love you. And she looked at me and she smiled and she told me she loved me. And I told her I loved her and I'd see her at 8. Okay. So I left out. And I called. I don't remember who it was I was on the phone with, and I heard a code blue. But because my mom was on a DNR, there should not have been a code blue on her. So I didn't pay attention to that.
Right.
And a few minutes later, I guess it's about 5-10 minutes later, the nurse came and got me and told me I needed to go with her. And I said, okay. The person I was on the phone with, I said, I've got to go. I'll call y'all back later. And I said, the nurse has come to get me. And we were walking toward the ICU, which is just very short distance. I walked through the double doors. And as soon as I walked through the double doors, I saw my mom's doctor. And the look on her face let me know that it was my mom. And I said, how? Why, you weren't, there was not supposed to be a code called on her. So how can it be her?
Mm-hmm.
And the little nurse that was there with me, she looked at me and she was crying. And she said, I'm so sorry. She said, I panicked. And what had happened was she had turned my mom to clean her. And my mom was fully cognizant. She was talking with her back and forth a little bit. And as soon as she turned my mom over, she was gone. 1 second, that's all it took. She was gone. And the nurse panicked and hit the code blue. And they worked on her. And she was gone. And after telling Piggy about it, years later, he let me know. And he just said this. He said that was God letting you know that there was nothing you could do to save her.
Absolutely.
Nothing you did would have saved her. It was
That's such a gift. That was such a gift to you from God. And I know we're running close to being out of time, but I know that you went through depression after you lost your mom, and then you found out. I'm going to move right to when you found out that you had cancer, because there was a story that you and Piggy shared with Mike and I last night.
Yeah.
And I want us to just to touch on that, and then I'm going to ask you that question.
Okay.
But for those of us that don't know, that Eileen had a bout with cancer, and thank God she is cancer-free today. She had surgeries, full hysterectomies, and a lot of chemo and radiation.
Yes.
But there was a time that you were in the hospital.
Thursday night, yes.
Yes. Tell them that story.
August the 8th, 2013. It was a Thursday night. I'd been in and out on the morphine and everything else all week. But that night, it wasn't the first time I had the vision, dream, whatever it was, of darkness in my room. And that night, it was a darkness so dark that I couldn't comprehend it. I mean, it was literally that dark. I saw it come in my room. I saw the door open. I saw the darkness come in and obliterate the light. And I started praying. And I said, Jesus, please make it go away. And I was turning everything over to Jesus and God. I said, God, I can't do this. It's only through you that I can make this. The most beautiful blue light started shining at the head of my bed. And I call it a crystalline blue light because it was just like blue crystal, beautiful. And the more it shone, the brighter it got, the bigger it got, the more it expanded out into the room. And what I did not know is that while I was praying, Piggy was also praying. He was praying for everyone in the hospital, not just for me, but for all of us. But once that blue light started, it started pushing the darkness out. And like I said, I could literally see it going out of my hospital room door. I saw it go into the hallway, down the hallway, and I could feel that darkness leaving that floor, leaving the next floor. I could literally feel the darkness leaving the hospital. It was being forced out one floor at a time. The next morning, one of my doctors came in, and I had told him that, this was after all of this had happened. Piggy had brought a brownie and some lemonade in.
Mhm.
And I ate half of this brownie, drank half of this lemonade, and that's the first thing I'd had to eat in about 11 days. And really, the first thing I'd had to drink in 11 days.
Mm.
And I told the doctor that I ate it. He said, okay. He said, if you can keep breakfast and lunch down, you can go home. I said, okay. And he took my NG tube out and he ordered breakfast. Well, I got breakfast about 10 o'clock, and at 12 o'clock, they brought my lunch in. I ate pretty much all my breakfast and I ate about half of my lunch. I kept everything down. And then the resident come in at 3 o'clock and told me that I would get to go home, but he didn't know what time I would get to go home, because it depended on when they could get the paperwork done and get transportation up to take me out, because they were having a mass exodus of the hospital. And we were like, what? And one of the nurses that came in at the time, she said, yeah. She said, every floor, we have people going home from every floor. People that were not scheduled to go home for another week, another 2 weeks, are going home today. Transportation is backed up. As soon as they pick one up and drop them off their vehicle, they're going to another floor to pick somebody up and drop them off. Transportation was constantly busy. They had even not just the volunteers from transportation, they literally had people that worked at the hospital in administration helping take people out. There were so many people getting discharged that day. And we figured out there was probably about 90% of the patients discharged that day. And we attribute it to the fact that Jesus showed up and Jesus showed out and he healed. And he didn't heal just me. He didn't just heal the people on the floor I was on. He healed the people throughout that hospital, and he allowed them to go home. And he's been doing that for me throughout my whole battle of cancer. And he's been doing that for me ever since. He shows up, he shows out, and, I can't help but share my faith because of things like that. People ask me, have you ever seen a miracle? Yeah, I've seen many miracles. But
you're a walking, living, breathing miracle. And I get a little emotional thinking about how amazing your testimony is, your story, how blessed that every single person that is watching this now is. And, like I said, there were so many more details and so many little miracles. But the one thing that I had asked you prior to my very last question was, you went through the loss of your best friend, your mother, and you went through and healed and overcame the molestation, the financial struggles, move after move after move after move, the your cancer and the chemotherapy and the radiation, and you were healed. God healed you through that. You witnessed many miracles, and one of them being the last one, and not the last miracle that you witnessed, but the one that you just shared with us, a very significant miracle where you were in the hospital. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't something that you imagined or thought about. It was something that truly happened, that you saw the darkness leave your room. And not only was it you praying, but Piggy was praying. And the darkness didn't just leave your room. It left every floor of that hospital.
Yes.
And 90% of the patients there were being discharged because they were healed. And I'm wondering, and then I know we have a couple of minutes, but I want to ask you this last question, then maybe Mike has something to say because he's been watching the comments for us. But I want to know who Eileen Sanford is today. Who are you today?
Well, it probably won't be the exact same answer, but similar to what I told you last night on that, is that I'm a culmination of all of that. I'm a culmination of the little girl who was molested, of the teenager who lost the stepdad and had to take on the adult responsibilities before she was ready, of the young woman whose mother led her back to Christ, of the adult who gave up her life to take care of her mom, and of the woman who survived cancer. And as I said last night, I'm a daughter of the Most High King, and I am the wife of Piggy because
You
God
sure
gave me Piggy. He didn't give me the Piggy. He gave Piggy to me because if he hadn't, I wouldn't be here today.
Hmm.
It's because
You're
of her.
such
I went to the
a
hospital.
beautiful soul. And I know that everyone here that's listening is so grateful that you came on. I know that I am honored and blessed that you came on and you shared the details again, so that others will know that they're not alone, so that others can see beauty and healing and God through you. And so we're so honored that you were our first guest of this. We don't know if this is going to be, we had a lot of comments. I see that people have some stories that they want to share. So, you know, you were the starting point of this sort of new format. And we are grateful. We are so grateful and appreciative to you. And I love you so much.
I think I really love y'all too. I just want to say I'm sorry if I haven't. I don't know if I'm echoing or what's going on, but I hear an echo. But I just want to say I'm sorry if I've missed any comments. Yeah, I've been trying to focus on what's going on. Thank you all, John Wiggs. I really don't mean to make any of y'all cry. I just wanted to share my testimony with everybody and let you know this is who I am. What you see is what you get. Yeah.
Yes, and you know, I've seen a lot of comments in here too as well, and very much appreciative of all of them. And yes, I understand, and we know that this could have been a real sensitive topic with a lot of you folks, but for the most part, that's what this was about, just to Eileen to share and to show others that maybe they've been too ashamed to share or couldn't let it out or whatever the reasons may be. But you know, you're not alone, and there is definitely no judgment in this place.
Yeah, absolutely not.
And you know, it's accomplished, I hope, by seeing some of the comments exactly what it was intended to do. You know, that some of these comments could have been the first time ever some of y'all might have said anything about it, and to bring it out in an open forum, something like this, is pure courage. As Eileen showed, pure courage. But you know, this Pretty and Pooch show, I'm not going to say it was a trial run, but I will tell you that's what Pretty does.
Yeah.
She has a no judgment here show. That's what she does. Now, we've been kicking it around a little bit, and I know that most likely, I think she's going to bring her own YouTube channel back with no judgment here. She's had it, but it went to a radio station. But I think she's considering bringing it back. But I think there's a place for this. I think there's a place for many that maybe catch on to it and just to listen, share, because most of the folks sitting in here, I'm quite certain they have no judgment either. So that's the good thing, and that's the beauty of this. So
when you think about it, we all have a past.
We all have a past.
Yes.
And you know, we've all overcome a lot.
That's right.
And there's so much healing that comes from I know for me, when I share my testimony, there's so much healing and strength that comes from it. I feel joy when I share it, even though, you know, one thing that you said yesterday, Eileen, is if you had to do it all over again, you wouldn't change one thing. You would have lived your life exactly the same because it made you who you are today. And that person is just beautiful. Oh my gosh. I'm just grateful. I'm grateful. And I feel the same. If I share my testimony at some time, it is a lot, and it can be sensitive for some to listen to. But again, it is shared so that others will know that you're not alone and that the Lord is good, and he doesn't do these things to us, but he is with us throughout. And you can see in Eileen's face the beauty of the work of the Lord, and that's for sure. So I just want to thank you so much, and thank everybody for listening. And I am I'm blessed. I'm blessed to know you, Eileen. So thank you. Thank you for coming on and sharing.
Yes, and again, anybody, if you wish to reach out to myself, to Tish, Facebook, you can find her through me on Facebook or email. We can get you email connected. Anybody's welcome, open to speak. But I appreciate all of you, and I appreciate all the comments, all those that are here, and most definitely love you, Elaine and Piggy, as well as each and every one of y'all on this show. But until Sunday, when Pooch will be on Live with Pooch, we'll see y'all then. Everybody have a good evening.
Good night.
And thank you all.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Elaine.
Bye.
Thank y'all so much.
Mm.